Vince Santos wants to know, do you need to speak Spanish? Personally, I can barely order my breakfast tacos in Spanish and I get along out here just fine. I'd be like, In this video, I'm jumping into episode 2 of answering your questions about living in San Antonio, Texas. We're talking snowstorms, speaking Spanish out here, and comparing neighborhoods, and we're getting into it right now. What's going on, family? This is Greg Foster with Market Boss at eXp Realty, and welcome back to my channel, the #1 place for everything you want to know about living, working, eating, chilling, and playing in San Antonio, Texas. In my last video, I answered a lot of the questions and comments that y'all been leaving on the channel about living in San Antonio, and we had such an amazing response that I figured I'd circle back around for round 2. Now, if you've got questions that you want answered about living in San Antonio, or if you've got something you want to share about living in this amazing city, then show some love and drop a comment down below for a chance to get featured on our next video. Okay, let's see what we got. Geneva B wants to know, what are some things that people can't know about San Antonio unless you live there, or what are some things that people don't tell you about San Antonio? For me, I probably have to say that it's the culture and the vibe here. I mean, you can't really know what that's like until you experience it firsthand when you get here. And I promise y'all, I'm not trying to get all woo-woo on everybody, okay? And I know that it's tough to put words to a feeling, but I'm telling you, it's just a different kind of energy out here in San Antonio. And it's why when I'm putting these videos together, I like to drive through the neighborhoods to show off the homes and the trails and the amenities. It's why I throw the drone up in the air so you can see the landscapes with the hills and the sunsets, all the parks and the lakes and the fun stuff to do here. This city really is beautiful and has such a major impact on how people feel when they live out here. When people reach out to our team about moving to San Antonio, one of the first things that we always ask people is if you've been here before, because if you have, then you know firsthand exactly what I'm talking about. More than anything though, it's really the people here that make San Antonio what it is, and you don't have to take my word for it. Every video on this channel is full of comments from people that just love this city. Strongo says, I've lived here for 2 years now. It's awesome for me. This city is peaceful. People are really friendly and respectful. There's lots to do and lots of food to eat. The city is growing bigger. There's a lot of opportunity here. Lazarus Salazar says, we moved here 4 months ago and absolutely love it. We live in Alamo Ranch. My wife and I love the schools, and my son is just excited to go. And like you said, the economy here is incredible. If you're not working, it's because you don't want to. And then Jaime Sentian says, great video. I love San Antonio, and looking at your video, I want to tell you that most of the things you mentioned are spot on. One more thing, San Antonio is like 4 different cities in one, depending on what side of the city you're in. There's different customs and different neighborhoods here too. Us older folks know the difference. It can tell what side of the city you live on based on how you talk and act. People just really love living here, and it's one of those things that you have to experience for yourself in order to really understand. That, and you can't really appreciate how bad the fire ants are out here until you get to San Antonio and one of them things starts chewing on you. Vince Santos wants to know, do you need to speak Spanish? Well, the short answer is no, but guess what?
It'd be a lot cooler if you did.
Personally, I can barely order my breakfast tacos in Spanish and I get along out here just fine. I'd be like, no, I'm just playing. I'm not even about to embarrass myself on here like that right now. But this city does have a super rich history and Spanish culture that impacts just about every aspect of living here. From the food and the architecture on down to the customs and the family-oriented vibe, it's what really draws a lot of people out here to the area. But if all you can do is count to 10 and barely order your food like me, you probably gonna be fine. Justin Wells says, you had me at breakfast tacos. My man. So in case you haven't heard, the breakfast taco game is super strong in San Antonio, Texas. Now personally, I'm an asada bean and cheese kind of guy myself. But we take breakfast tacos super seriously out here. So much so that these food trucks folks and these restaurant staff be looking at you real sideways if you're trying to make substitutions from what you see on the menu. Because what you see is what you get. And while we're on the topic, it's come to my attention that there's this ongoing debate between Texans and Californians about who has the best Mexican food, and I just wanted to take a moment to clear the air. Now, I know a lot of y'all out there in California feel a certain kind of way about y'all's Mexican food, but I just want to make sure I set one thing straight. This is Texas! Unless you sit in Mexico right now watching this, I promise you, your Mexican food ain't better than the Mexican food in Texas, okay? Matter of fact, I heard y'all put French fries in y'all burritos out there in California.
We don't do that here.
Sean Young asks, do you like Alamo Ranch or Stone Oak better? This one's actually a really good question because a lot of the people who are reaching out to us about moving to San Antonio are usually comparing these two neighborhoods to each other. And if you currently live in San Antonio or you're researching these neighborhoods and you got a feel for what you like one over the other, why don't you go ahead and help me out, drop a comment below and let everybody know what you think about it. But full disclosure though, I actually live out in the Alamo Ranch area, out in the far west side of San Antonio, so I'm a little bit biased. And I've actually got this whole playlist right here about what it's like to live out on the far west side of town in case y'all want to check that out. But for some reason, this video that I did right here about Stone Oak really got the phone ringing from a lot of y'all moving out here. I mean, seriously though, I went back and watched this thing like a dozen times trying to figure out what I did and how to recreate it, but I think it just comes down to the fact that Stone Oak is pretty awesome. But they're both really good places to live, and I think it really just comes down to what you're looking for more so in a neighborhood. I happen to think that Stone Oak is a prettier place to live just because of all the hills, the higher elevation, and the views that you get from being up in that part of town. Whereas Alamo Ranch on the far west side is generally more flat with less mature landscaping because of all the newer subdivisions going in recently. Their overall cost of living is slightly higher though in Stone Oak because it still falls within city limits, and so you've got higher property taxes in the 2.7% range. And you pay a little more for all that beauty with slightly higher HOA costs with all the gated communities up in there. And in some sections, you can actually pay into 2 or 3 different HOAs depending on how your subdivision was cut. Contrast that with Alamo Ranch on the far west side, and you'll see on the map that most everywhere out here still falls outside of city limits. Your property taxes are more like 2% out here, and even with the lower HOA costs, a lot of these newer subdivisions still have some pretty amazing amenities. The school systems on both sides of town are both exemplary rated, although Reagan High School in Stone Oak outranks pretty much everywhere else. But the biggest difference that you're going to find is going to be in the ages, the styles, and in the price points of the homes in these areas. Stone Oak's about 15 to 20 years older and completely built out with entry-level homes starting in the low 300,000s, ranging all the way up to $1 million estates on top of hills with views so far you can see downtown San Antonio on a really clear day. Out in Alamo Ranch, you'll still find homes starting in the mid 200,000s with pricings topping out in the high 400s. The area is a lot newer, and right now in the spring of 2021, there's still several new developments going up in different phases of completion. If you're really looking for affordability and great schools, as well as a newer home with some of the best neighborhood amenities in the entire city, then I'm telling you, Alamo Ranch is where it's at. But for the people who are willing to pay a little extra for the location, for the scenery, and for the exclusivity that comes from living in the Stone Oak area, they tell you that there's nowhere else in San Antonio that they'd rather live. CP says, San Diegan here. I love San Diego's historical homes from 1890 to 1925, but they are 1.2 million and up. Your video mentioned historical homes and mid-century modern. What neighborhoods can I find these in? If you're checking out the map, you'll see this inner loop 410 that runs all the way around the city. Right up in there is where you'll find a lot of the mid-century neighborhoods like Castle Hills, Ridgeview, and Shearer Hills. Locals in San Antonio really dig this area because it's the textbook definition of being centrally located. You've got all kinds of shopping and entertainment with North Star Mall right there with every kind of restaurant you can imagine right around the corner from your house. You're just a few minutes away from the airport and you're right in the middle of every major highway system in the city. Then as you move further in, you'll cross through several historic districts as you make your way towards downtown San Antonio. You've got neighborhoods like Almost Park, Monte Vista, Alamo Heights, and Terrell Hills. And if you want to check out some of the original historic neighborhoods from the turn of the century, then you gotta check out the neighborhoods that are right adjacent to downtown San Antonio. It's unreal how much development there's been in neighborhoods like King William, Southtown, Lavaca, and Dignity. You've got these classic homes on larger lots with amazing architecture and some of the most walkable communities in the entire city with downtown San Antonio right in your backyard. You can actually check out this video right here for more info on the styles of the homes and what it's like to live in these areas. We're definitely seeing a lot of people move over to the historic parts of San Antonio to take advantage of the urban living and the walkable lifestyle down there. So Julie Smith says, you said about the season being 2 summers. She wants to know how are the winter months. So this goes back to one of my other videos where I said something like, we do have all 4 seasons. There's fall, spring, summer 1, and summer 2. That's just to say that it's either warm, hot, or really hot in San Antonio for most of the year. My wife and I grew up in the Midwest, so the first time that we went back to school shopping out here, we made the mistake of buying our kids all these jeans and long sleeve shirts and hoodies. And then of course we ended up with highs in the mid 90s all the way through Thanksgiving. I can still remember one of the first Halloweens out here when my wife got extra fancy and ordered me and our youngest daughter some custom Beauty and the Beast costumes. Not only could I not see anything in that mask and she had to lead me around half blind most of the time, but I swear I lost like 10 pounds sweating in that thing because it was like 85 degrees that night. We did win the best costume contest though. Most winters here are really mild though, with highs in the mid 50s from December on through February, and you get a few nights here and there where it'll drop down to the low 30s. At least that's what I've been saying to people until we got this like freak of nature snowstorm that happened back in February that pretty much shut down the whole state of Texas for a week. At first it was like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. Kids, come look at the snow, play in the snow, be one with the snow. And everyone was happy. Oh yeah, and there was also that one guy that was rolling through Stillwater Ranch on his four-wheeler doing donuts in the cul-de-sacs. And then the power went out and didn't come back on for like 3 days. Crazy thing though is that it was over just as fast as it started. Weatherman was like, Wednesday, 18 degrees outside and miserable. Thursday, 76 degrees outside and beautiful. Other than that one freak event that we'll probably never see again in our lifetime, the winters out here in San Antonio are usually pretty easy. Ali Alizani says they're from California and they want to know which part of the city is better for cool weather. The thing about San Antonio is that once you get down to this part of Central and South Texas, the heat and the humidity out here are pretty much going to get you no matter where you go. Now don't get me wrong though, it's still nowhere near as bad as the deep south in which you'll find in areas like Houston or Louisiana or Alabama, but it's still a lot to deal with, especially in July and August when it's the hottest part of the year. If I had to pick, I'd probably say that the far north and the northwest parts of San Antonio are your best bet though. It gets pretty hilly in these areas, especially in neighborhoods like Stone Oak and Indian Springs up north, where you got a lot of higher elevation over the rest of the city. And then of course the Helotes and La Cantera areas are really known for their topography, and you've got these entire communities perched on hilltops and ridges overlooking golf courses and nature preserves. Living higher up in these areas, you definitely get the benefit of slightly lower temperatures and a nice breeze that blows through the neighborhood to keep you cool in the shade if you're spending time outside. Omega 9 asks, does it flood a lot in Helotes? I've heard some people say San Antonio area often floods. Nah, flooding isn't really an issue in Helotes or in many other parts of San Antonio either. Now in some of those hilly spots like Helotes, you do see more flood gauges on some of the farm roads out there because with all those hills, you do tend to get a lot of lower lying areas for the water to drain into. Fortunately though, most of these areas have a lot of drainage ditches to help with keeping the water away from the houses and off of the roads. For as much as it rains out here in San Antonio, the drainage and the sewer systems actually do a really good job out here. Now if you want to make sure you avoid flood prone cities in Texas, then Houston is really the one that you got to watch out for. Yard Joy wants to know, how far in advance should a person start looking if they're thinking about relocating? We tell most people that if you're thinking about relocating anytime in the next 6 months to a year, then it's a really good idea to go ahead and just reach out to our team, start the conversation, and get a plan together to see what it looks like to move out here and how to get a smooth transition. We've got people that we're working with right now that we first started talking to over a year ago, and when I think back to what it was like moving to San Antonio, I just know that my family and I, we would have really appreciated having somebody that we could talk to ahead of time to kind of keep us in the loop on what was going on out here. Now if you're thinking about moving to San Antonio and you want any more information on what it's like to live out here and what that process might look like, our team's getting calls from people every single day just like you, looking into the Alamo City, and we really dig it. So if you're thinking about moving or relocating anywhere in the San Antonio area, then give us a call, shoot us a text, send us an email. However you want to get a hold of us, we've got your back. We're moving to San Antonio, Texas.